Hello, welcome everybody to another episode of the Founders Era. I'm Ron Timoshenko,
I am Terrillo Walls.
and today we are talking about the power of networking and how networking helps you get things done. So, Terrillo,
Oh gosh.
do you have an experience? I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah, I know
No,
I have a
I'm
story. I know I have a
I,
story. I shared mine, but tell me the story.
I am going to be the student in this
You're
conversation.
going to
I'm
be the student.
terrible at networking.
You're
Absolutely
terrible at
terrible.
networking?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think for a long time I didn't understand the value of it. I thought that
Mm.
just was one of those like corporate things you just did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I also never had the use case for a long time
Yeah.
of like reaching
Mm-hmm.
out to a person being like, hey, I need your insight on something. Not to say I haven't met cool people, I just haven't
Mm-hmm.
needed them in a certain scenario. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think a couple of years ago, I met a guy at a conference and I was doing some research on some Drupal thing, and I was just like banging my head against the wall. But I happened to meet the guy who made the plugin
Oh,
at a
nice.
conference.
What
So
are the
yeah,
odds?
yeah, it was like, oh, great, cool. Is it this thing of like, hey, let me reach out to you and kind of see, we started following each other on LinkedIn and stuff. But it was like for me, it was helpful to see that like if I didn't go up to him and introduce myself and try to like, like just connect on LinkedIn, I guess in this case, I would have been like, like stuck in that situation. So that
Mm-hmm.
was really my first example of like the power of networking, how effective
Mm-hmm.
it can be. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, I suck at it. I'm your typical developer when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
like networking. So
Yeah, I definitely empathize. That honestly, that's exactly where I was at before I became a product manager at
mm,
Consumer Affairs. I was very much sticking to myself, stayed in my own zone, kind of stayed in my own box. But I quickly realized, I mean, it was my first management title, my first real management position. Not that I hadn't ever led a team or been in charge of a team, but it was different. And I had to be responsible for what other people were doing. So I had to learn how
yeah.
to talk to people and understand what people cared about. And it was initially pretty draining, I have to admit, because I'm very introverted, or at least I was. Now I would consider myself more of an ambivert, where I'm very comfortable with myself, spending time alone, or like really
Mm,
working on machine learning experimentation, as we were talking
yeah.
about before the call, or spending some time with friends, talking to friends, and recording a conversation. I think I get a lot of joy, and there are things that I enjoy out of both of those things. But I had to learn how to enjoy talking to people. And
Mm,
I actually credit networking for that. And it was falling in love with it because I had to do it in a weird way. So,
mm, yeah.
like also to your point, the first time I did a bunch of networking events, it felt corporate-y, like just
Yeah.
some bullshit that I have to do.
Yeah.
Like go to
Yeah.
this mixer and mingle. I'm like, what's the point? What a waste of
Yeah.
time. I could go home and
Yeah.
code. I could be coding right now.
Yeah. It's also like it's weird too because I think anyone's experience, like for
Mm,
us, it's like
mm,
the version before that, before you need it, is like you're
mm.
trying to find a job.
That's
Right. It's
true.
like I'm gonna
That's
go
true.
network to find a job,
Mm,
right? To talk to people who can hire me, or you know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
Like it's like a
mm-hmm.
different reason for going.
It's
So
true.
you have to kind of switch your mind of like, okay, I'm almost like trying to find a situation where I can use this at work or
Mm,
something, but you have to just be more casual and more,
mm-hmm,
natural with it, of course, to make it, you know, worked a while, or
mm-hmm.
try to consider. But yeah.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing, though, I think to that point is this. I didn't think about this when I first started networking. Is you can be intentional about the kinds of people that you go meet, reach out
Mm,
to, and talk with. Just because you're at a mixer doesn't mean you have to do with or go with
right.
whatever their event is or something like that. If you see a bunch of people who are hanging out in a spot that you can tell are other developers, you could go there and talk to them and
Yeah.
ask them,
Yeah.
and you could meet with the creator of a plugin, like you said, you never know. And that was something that I learned to appreciate, because for me, and you're so right, it about being the context, and it was based on previous context. I'd never really been at a mixer other than at a job fair of some kind, and that was, I mean, to a certain degree, that was those were some of the mixers that I went to. I had to go to them as a manager at Consumer Affairs. We were recruiting, we were trying to find talent, we were trying to represent ourselves to the community. So there were a lot of those that I went to. I just tried to think about, well, what value can I glean from this event? What can I learn? What learning experiences
That's a good way to
can
put it.
I gain
Yeah.
from this? Especially not being super social.
Yeah,
You're gonna
exactly.
say something.
Versus like me when I'm like, I'm gonna get this over with. Like, why?
Hmm. That's how I used to feel.
Yeah.
I did
Where's
for a
the bar?
while. Yeah, exactly. That's how I started, I have to
Yeah.
admit that. But y- I'm very much I want to say optimist, very
Mm.
positive mindset person. I would say I'm an optimist to a fault sometimes,
Mm.
but I prefer to view the world that way. And whenever I'm in a situation that, not always, but I try to think and I try to convince myself, what can I learn from this experience? Or is there something that I can glean from this? And I will say that I did not come of this mindset on my own. I listened to a podcast and stuff where they were
Nice.
talking about this kind of stuff. And actually I used to listen to, have you heard of Ramit Sethi?
No.
You haven't? Ramit
Um,
Sethi is a personal finance blogger, YouTuber. I think he's a
oh,
YouTuber.
interesting.
And he was a YouTuber. And I used to follow his channel. And I think it was called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I don't know if it's still called that.
Mm.
And he just shared a bunch of tips and practical life advice in personal finance, how to negotiate, what to do
Mm.
when you show up at an interview. A lot of it was just things that he learned, tips and tricks that he learned as he progressed through his own career. And he shared some advice about talking to people and how it wasn't about networking, it was more around communicating, and how he had read this book by a reporter. I'm going to mess up the name. I want to say Diane Keaton. I don't know if it was Diane. I think that's an actor.
Mm.
But she was a famous news anchor, and she wrote this book. I wish I could remember her name. I feel bad that I can't remember. But she wrote this book around the idea of how to talk to anybody. Because as a news anchor, that was her job, was to interview people, and she had to make anybody interesting. How can I make 15 minutes of airtime
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
talking to any random person?
Gosh.
And she just shared her tips in the book, and she shared about her strategy. And it's very similar to the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, but
Mm.
more practical from a conversational side. And it's just a few tips. Learn to be interested in people, and then
Yeah.
ask them questions about things that they're interested in, and they will naturally, people love talking about the things that they're passionate about and talking about themselves. So if you
Yeah.
ask the right questions, you can learn a lot. And you might find that this person developed a certain plugin that you're
Yeah.
looking for help with.
Yeah.
You never know.
Or I think another case too that I could think of is like people recommending you for jobs. I've had
Mm,
that happen quite a bit.
that's right.
I started
Hmm.
my last job actually. I was
Mm.
recommended by an intern that I had. He
Oh,
moved to
really?
be an intern for the company I ended up working for. He was like, "Hey, this guy is really great at like leading people. You should
Mm.
look at him." So and it became the top of their list, right? Because that's the first thing you
Hmm.
look for is like, can you recommend somebody? You know.
Absolutely.
So that was like an interesting way too. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That is a great one. And it's kind of ironic because you mentioned the point of a job fair, but that's a really great way to get job offers and recommendations is through networking.
Yeah.
And especially if you work with that person in some capacity, that's really great. And to your point about LinkedIn earlier, that's a really great way to nurture and maintain those relationships. You never know when somebody you've worked with in the past could put in a good word for you at
Hmm.
another
Yeah. Yeah.
place and get you a job or an opportunity that you weren't expecting. That's how you get lucky,
Yeah.
is you just meet the
Yeah.
right person at the right
Exactly.
time. You increase your exposure to these different opportunities, different people, and you might hit big. You never know. There
Hmm.
have been plenty of people that I've referred to someone else just
Mm.
because someone was looking for someone. They'll
Yeah.
ask me, and I'll say, I don't do that anymore, but I know someone who does. So
Yeah. Yeah. For real.
I give them their contact info. Or usually I reach out to the person and say, hey, so and so is looking for someone, are you
Mm.
interested? And then I'll make the connection. Depends on how close I am to that person. There
Sure.
have been times where I've made a recommendation straight through LinkedIn. I've said, oh, you should talk to so and so. And
Mm.
I'll share a link to their profile. And I can say, you can even let them know that I referred you. And hopefully that means something good.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
depends. It depends.
Yeah.
In most cases it does. So,
Yeah. So what are some of your tips for like
mm,
networking? Do you
mm,
go for like
great question.
a like a I know on LinkedIn, for
Mm,
example, you have like a lot of people
mm,
connected with. Like every
yeah,
time you post something, it seems like you have a ton of people just like liking your stuff.
interacting.
I'm
Yeah,
always like,
I can
how
tell you
many
the secret.
connections do you have? So are you
Yeah.
going for more of like
Mm,
shotgun approach? Is that the best approach
mm,
for networking? Is to like connect with as many people as possible, or it's about
mhm.
like trying to find something to connect over or being more selective? I don't know. Kind of curious to see
Yeah,
like is
that's a great
there
question.
a problem with just connecting with everybody?
Shotgun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good question, and different people have different perspectives on it. And for me, it's a little bit of a hybrid. I make sure to connect. I think I've shared this tip with you before. I remember somebody sharing this with me, and I love this advice, and I've done it. If I ever have a meeting with somebody, especially if it's a video call, I will immediately send them a LinkedIn invitation because I've met
Mm,
them in some way. If I've met them
gotcha.
in person, all the more. I will send them an invite to connect with them on LinkedIn. I've interacted with them. And
Interesting.
if I can, I will send a note. Hey, it was great meeting you at such and such event. And then I'll send them an invite. And it's not just for giving them context. If we just met, they know who I am. They'll see my face, they'll
Right, right,
recognize me. The
right.
reason why is because this actually happened to me. Someone will ask me later, hey, you know so and so, how did you meet them? And I had no idea who they were
Mm,
talking about.
yeah,
So I went in LinkedIn, I typed in the name, and I saw 5 years ago I had a conversation with this person. And
nice.
because I said I had that context, like, hey, it was great to meet you at such and such, and we had a brief exchange. I said, oh, I don't really know him, but I met him 5 years ago at this event.
Wow.
And I could
Quick
tell him.
tip to grow on your
Yeah,
networking right
yeah,
there.
yeah. And
That's solid advice. I didn't
it's
You didn't tell me that
simple.
before. Yeah, that's
I thought I
pretty.
told you that. Yeah.
No, I
Mm,
need to start doing that though.
mm. It's
Because yeah,
easy.
that's
Mm,
there's oftentimes too where people ask me, it's like, hey, do you know anybody who do this like
mhm.
type of work? And it's like, I don't, but I have, right? Type thing.
Yeah.
I don't need
Mhm.
one right now, but I
Right.
have met awesome iOS developers, for
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
or I did know someone at this company,
Mhm.
who used to work there that might be insightful or worked in this
Mhm.
market in this space, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a
And by
great tip.
connecting with them like that, you can just search your contacts and you can connect
Right.
people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great tip.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm glad you like that. I found it incredibly useful. And for that reason, like you just mentioned, being able to refer people that you need, or if you're looking for somebody, you're looking for a designer or a marketer, and you remember
Yeah.
meeting somebody
Yeah.
years ago, you can search through your
Yeah.
network. That's really that's the value right there. Obviously it builds over time. You're not going to
Mhm.
get there day one, but you just do it a little bit at a time every time you have a meeting with somebody. And I've met a lot of interesting people and a lot of people I've forgotten. you know
Yeah, I can
Once you
imagine.
reach a
Yeah.
certain point, I don't even remember.
Yeah. It could be like
And
me and just have everyone forgotten.
yeah, right,
I
forgotten
have
everybody
no,
anyway. Yeah,
yeah, it's like I don't know anybody. I
yeah,
don't remember
yeah.
anybody from any conference.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, it's like,
Yeah, but I forget people too. Is
mhm.
that Dunbar's number? You can only
Yeah.
know 120 people or something like that. Beyond that, it goes out of your brain. So that's why
Right.
you need things like LinkedIn and stuff like that.
Okay.
But
I like this. All right. I think I'm gonna start trying to build a network of people because I,
mm,
I don't. I
mm,
just like on LinkedIn right now, it's
mm,
like you definitely sent me a connection. I didn't
mm,
send you one type
mm.
relationship on LinkedIn. Like it just is. Like when
Mhm,
I started, a job, I
mhm,
don't
mhm,
send coworkers or things like that. It's like, no, it's like
mhm,
it's just here, because I really haven't like given linking that true like chance, I guess you could say
mhm,
too.
mhm,
I don't really understand the true value
mm,
of like what it could do for a person's career and business. But I do want
mhm,
to start building those connections with different
mhm,
people, especially
mhm,
like here in town. If I
mhm,
go to like a little local like dev meetup or something
mhm,
like that, or go to a Python conference, like yeah, like definitely connect with people just so I
mhm.
can see what they're up to and see,
Yeah.
you know, so opportunities that they're working on or some I can throw their way. You just never
Mhm,
know. So
mhm.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point about conferences, that's actually one of the best places to
Yeah.
network and meet people because they're not in your city. You wouldn't naturally or normally run into them. So you
Hmm.
can meet people. And I remember when I was in San Francisco a couple years ago, there was this guy from Czechoslovakia who was starting a 3D printing startup. And he
Oh
was,
wow.
and I met
Wow.
him at this conference. It was, I think it was called Launch. And it was about startups that were
Oh
launching
yeah, yeah.
products and
I've
just kind
heard
of
of
what
that
they were going
conference.
through. It
Hmm.
was pretty cool. I don't know that it was worth going to
Hmm.
at the end of the day. I was hoping it would be like the Lean Startup Conference, which I had gone to a couple years before, and that was amazing. If you're learning about Lean Startup and all of that, and you're still new to the idea, going to one of those conferences will be a brain dump. Your mind
Hmm.
will hurt. It was the only conference that I had ever gone to where I actually took notes at every single session, and I took pages of
Wow.
notes. I felt so all of the information was so valuable because these speakers were just really knowledgeable about
Mm.
product and all the things that we're talking about,
Right.
honestly, like
Right.
conversion optimization, funnels, customers, retargeting, remarketing, engaging. A lot of these words were brand new to me. I didn't even know what these things meant. So
Yeah.
they're introducing these concepts and they're giving words for them and they're giving you a process. And I was like, hold on, slow down. I'm trying to write all this down, you know, but it was great. I really loved that experience. So I was hoping to get some of the same at the launch conference, and it just wasn't the same.
Mm.
I should have realized that, but honestly, it was more about being in San Francisco and networking there, meeting some of our, I think we met with our investors while I was there.
Oh
And
wow.
then also one of our sister companies, Thumbtack. When I worked at Consumer Affairs, there was one of our sister companies. It was, by sister I mean our investors. What some of our investors in Consumer
Yeah.
Affairs also invested into Thumbtack, and that's really great if you have
Yeah.
companies like that because then you can really share knowledge and things that you've tried. We would go there and like, what are you all doing for data? What are you doing
Yeah.
for ETL? And they're like, oh, we built this thing with Hadoop and we're using Spark. And like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, that's so
nice.
complicated.
Yeah.
We're
No,
doing
it's
something
very
simpler. Yeah.
complicated. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Went to a data conference a couple of years ago in DC, and that was me
Mm,
like learning about Hadoop and Spark
mm,
and all of
mm,
the crazy Apache stuff. But like,
mhm,
one of the talks I remember so vividly was like from a couple of engineers from India
mm.
that work on like the team that imports transactions for PayPal. And it's just like hearing
Wow.
about like their process of like, oh yeah, we have this
Mm,
thing. It takes in
mm,
about 1 million records. They go through this
mm.
step, that step. They go through this fraud check thing. They're sent back out. We put them in here, and yeah, this goes 24/7. We
That's
have
crazy.
these servers that spin up when the rest of the world's online. Like it's all these like crazy concepts that's like I always
That's
wondered
why
how
they're
this stuff
using that
works,
tech.
but you can
Yeah.
see also their scale too, but you can tell like they have so much experience from like just the highs and lows of that
Oh yeah.
process. So
Hmm. I can't even imagine the kind of data that they're working with. It reminds me, speaking of data and large amounts of data, I remember when I was at Consumer Affairs, we were trying to do research on what sort of solution we should use for our log search and log engine,
mm,
because we were collecting at CA, we had, I mean, in our heyday, we were getting at the most, while I worked there, we were getting up to 10 million visitors
mm,
every month, which is just insane amounts of traffic. I mean, it's not top 10
yeah, still a lot
internet,
though.
but
Still a lot.
still a lot.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking that was a lot until we talked to some of the vendors that our CTO
Yeah.
Adam had worked with. He was former CTO at Sony, and he had worked with someone at LinkedIn, and we connected with them and we asked them, hey, what are you all using for logs and log data? And they said, oh, we use this complicated, highly available structure cluster of Elasticsearch and
Yep.
Logstash, and we're
Yep.
doing our own
Yeah.
thing.
That's how you do it. Elasticsearch.
So,
It's kind of crazy because
mm-hmm,
like, yeah, when you start getting in data like that, is
mm-hmm,
like you need like a search engine for it.
exactly.
You-
Yeah.
It's not like a simple like like MySQL table.
No,
It's
you
like no,
need
you
a
need the thing with
system.
an algorithm, an index, a search like thing you can
Mm-hmm.
tweak and modify and assign fields and
Yeah, exactly.
learn
And they were
from and all kinds of stuff.
and they were dealing with such vast quantities of data. They
Mm.
said they dealt with petabytes a day,
Yeah,
and they were
yeah, that's
only
surprising.
ever they only ever stored 10% of that. So
Yeah.
that blew my mind that they had so much data that they were throwing away 90% of it. Like,
Yeah.
no, we can't
It's
even
like you
search
can't
it.
store it. No, you
Yeah,
learn from it and you
exactly.
move on. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was crazy. So, you know, that I laughed at that a little bit because we were going through so much trouble and so much effort trying to attribute and get data attribution on every single click. We were looking at reports on data and like, why do we have 100 records that we can't attribute exactly where
Yeah.
this traffic came from? It's like,
Yeah.
it's really hard to do this crime scene investigation
Oh yeah.
retroactively, you know?
Yeah, you just like it's a good reality check for you to be like, all
Mhm.
right, that's clearly a worse version of it. That's
Yeah.
how I felt. I went to that data conf. I came back. I'm
Mm.
like, oh yeah, like our
Our
problems are
problems aren't
nothing.
too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like I was very
Mm,
confident because before you're
mm.
like, there's no solution to this,
Yeah.
right? And then you like all
Mhm.
of a sudden it's like there's billions.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there,
There
and
you
that's what
go.
networking can
Mhm.
help with too. Yeah, because
Exactly.
you can
Mhm.
totally bring in a person that's like, it's like, hey, like just like point me in the right direction even,
Mhm.
or it's like, what did you do for this type of stack, for example? It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
use Elasticsearch and we use do this, and here's
Mhm.
what data is important, and it's so
Mhm.
so huge to have that insight.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the example that you just made, that point that you just made, that networking will also answer questions or give you context on things you're not even expecting. So
Hmm.
that was one other thing that I had experienced that I loved about just networking and talking to people is I realized that the problems that I was dealing with were not just my problems. And it
Yeah.
gave me context. So not only am I not the only one, but my problems are relatively small compared to dealing with
Yeah.
petabytes of data
Yeah.
where you have to throw
Yeah. Or
it
or
away,
also very common too,
Yeah.
like meeting people is like, oh, you have my problem 3 years ago. you
Right.
know
And they
they
can
love
tell
when it
you.
happened a lot at my last job where it's like, oh yeah, we had your problem 3 years ago. Here's how we
Mhm.
you're gonna experience this, you're gonna experience this, and then you're gonna
Mhm.
experience this, but
Yeah.
like you can do these things to help prevent it now. It's like great, great.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like that's super awesome. It's like
Yeah.
it's all about technology. It's like,
Mm.
at the level that I've been my entire career, I've never been in a position where I need to reinvent anything,
Mm.
right? I'm just kind of like doing something different or learning or doing something that someone else has already done.
Mm.
I've been in
Mhm.
a position where it's like I need to completely think of something that's never been done before in this, crazy way. It's like, no, this has been done before. Now I can just
Mhm.
focus on like building a cool product, right? Versus like trying to solve the technical thing that helps me build a cool product.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I love about where the web is going today. It's just people are building tools so that you can focus on the problem you're trying to
Exactly.
solve rather
Hmm.
than spend hours and hours in code. That's the other thing that I really love about networking is you'll be connected, hopefully, but unless you do it, it won't happen to
Hmm.
people who can, like exactly like you just said, tell you, you know what, we had that problem 3 years ago. Here's what you do. Here's the toolkit. Here's the library. They may even know what to do, what they've
Hmm.
done. It's like going back to one of our first episodes where I told you about AWS Copilot, and you said that's exactly
Oh
what I was
yeah,
looking
yeah,
for.
yeah, exactly. Oh
So
yeah,
it's
blew my mind.
yeah.
That and also
Mhm.
Cypress as well.
Oh
I use
yeah. Mhm.
Cypress for all of my testing.
Yeah, it's
Before I
awesome.
didn't do testing, so it
There
was
you
like
go.
from 0 to 100.
There you go.
But
There you
yeah,
go.
no, I think these conversations here have been like a great example of that, where it's like you
Yeah.
kind of,
Mhm.
you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing, and it's like, oh wow, we're doing these things like that can help each other in these different ways. It's like, have you tried this, try that?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like a simple conversation. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
important to just talk to more like-minded people. That's what I
Mhm.
plan to do,
Mhm.
post-pandemic, is to do more
Mhm.
conferences in
Mhm.
general, like
Mhm.
actually attend them for
Mhm.
personal, reasons, and try to like not only connect with the people there, but also try to like figure out where do they go when the conference is over, right?
Mm.
Trying to figure out where those communities are. Just
Mm.
try to be way more involved. I think it's going to help me mentally just get to be around more people. I
Yeah.
definitely have noticed in a couple of weeks is that I'm definitely missing the work office environment
Mm.
of
Mhm.
self-employment. Like
Yeah.
it's fantastic, but it's like I can't go to work and talk with people
Mm.
about this cool thing I found in Python because there's no one to
Mhm.
talk to
It's true.
about this cool
That's
thing about
true.
Python. Like my little daughter is amazing, but she doesn't care about Python.
Yeah.
It's
Not
not
the
that
kind of
same
Python.
feeling. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like just like, oh,
Mhm.
let's grab some coffee in the office, just talk about
Mm.
like this random thing in Python or something, or
Mhm.
this new library that came out, those type of things that I feel like I'm missing for sure. So I want to
Yeah,
try to use networking and,
there
to
you
help
go.
fill in those gaps.
Exactly. And I will say this one last thing before we end. The power of networking has given me people that I can talk to even when I can't see them in person. I can reach
Mm,
out to so and so.
yeah.
I've maintained some of those relationships. Some of them are former coworkers, but I've been able to reach out to them and say, "Hey, do you still write Django? Are you still a Django developer? I have a question." Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Here, let me send you a recording of what I did. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh man,
that's
that's
really
awesome.
great. So
Yeah. Or just like, hey, let's go grab some coffee or
yeah,
let's hop on a Zoom and just kind of catch up
exactly.
and chat. Like, yeah, it's super nice. It's
Yeah,
helpful for sure.
absolutely. Absolutely. I do go to co-working spaces too, though. That
Yeah, I
helps.
do too. But I think
Yeah.
I need
With
something
people that
where,
don't know Python.
yeah, like I don't want to like I'm also trying to work, at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's true.
like
That's
a
true.
like a
Hmm.
conference is that you're clearly there to learn something for a
Mm,
reason, but
hmm.
also everyone's at different levels,
That's
right?
true. Hmm.
So people are
Yep.
willing to talk more because there's a
Yeah,
point.
that's true.
Co-working
That's the
space
whole
a little
point.
bit different, but it still helps it a little bit, but yeah, a little different.
Hmm. Hmm.
All
Yeah,
right, so I think that
absolutely.
we'll do it here for the power of networking. Thanks everybody for listening, checking out the video. Please subscribe in the podcast app, subscribe on YouTube, like the video. Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Thanks.